Deep within the bowels of ancient castles and fortresses, hidden from the light of day, lie whispers of unimaginable suffering. These whispers emanate from places known as bottle dungeons, grim testaments to mankind's capacity for cruelty. Bottle dungeons were not merely prisons, they were instruments of terror designed to break the body and spirit of those unfortunate souls condemned to their depths. Their very name evokes a sense of claustrophobia and dread, conjuring images of being trapped and forgotten within the cold, unforgiving embrace of the earth. These subterranean chambers, often located below ground level, were specifically engineered to inflict maximum suffering through isolation, darkness, and deprivation. Join us now as we descend into the chilling history of these infamous prisons. The design of a bottle dungeon was as simple as it was effective. Typically, these dungeons consisted of a single narrow shaft sunk deep into the earth, often with a wider chamber at the bottom. Access to the chamber was gained through a small opening at the top, just large enough to lower prisoners down inside. This narrow opening served several sinister purposes. It restricted airflow, making the dungeon stifling and airless. It also prevented natural light from penetrating the chamber below, condemning prisoners to perpetual darkness. This design ensured that escape was virtually impossible, trapping victims within a subterranean nightmare. The chamber at the bottom, while larger than the shaft, offered little respite. Often circular or oval-shaped, these chambers provided minimal space for movement. Prisoners were forced to exist in cramped, unsanitary conditions, surrounded by filth, vermin, and the stench of decay. The psychological impact of such an environment was profound. The use of bottle dungeons dates back centuries, with evidence suggesting their existence as far back as the medieval period. These early examples were often rudimentary in construction, consisting of little more than pits dug into the ground. Their use was widespread, employed by both state and religious authorities as a means of confinement and punishment. Historian. As time progressed, the design of bottle dungeons became more sophisticated, reflecting a growing understanding of how to maximize suffering. The construction of castles and fortresses provided ideal locations for these subterranean prisons. Bottle dungeons became an integral part of many medieval strongholds, serving as a stark reminder of the power held by those in control. The reasons for imprisonment within a bottle dungeon varied. Common offenses included theft, treason, and heresy. However, the arbitrary nature of justice during this period meant that anyone could find themselves condemned to these depths, often on the flimsiest of pretexts, or based on accusations fueled by envy, greed, or revenge. Scattered across Europe, the remnants of these chilling prisons serve as stark reminders of the dark side of human history. Some of the most infamous bottle dungeons are still standing today, their crumbling walls bearing silent witness to the suffering inflicted within. One such example is the bottle dungeon located beneath Warwick Castle in England. This dungeon, reputed to be haunted by the tormented souls of former prisoners, is a chilling testament to the castle's brutal past. Its narrow shaft and cramped chamber evoke a palpable sense of dread, even centuries after its use. Another notorious example can be found in the depths of Edinburgh Castle in Scotland. Known as David's Tower, this bottle dungeon housed prisoners of war and political enemies. Its cramped, airless conditions were said to be unbearable, with many perishing from disease, starvation, or simply the despair of their confinement. These are but a few examples of the many bottle dungeons that once dotted the landscape of Europe. Each one holds within its walls a unique and often tragic history, a testament to the darkness that can reside within the human heart. The history of bottle dungeons is replete with tales of suffering and despair. Countless souls were condemned to these subterranean hells, their names lost to time. However, the stories of a few unfortunate individuals have survived, their fates serving as stark reminders of the human cost of such barbarity.
One such individual was William Douglas, the 6th Earl of Douglas. Accused of treason by King James I of Scotland, Douglas was imprisoned in 1440 within the bottle dungeon of Edinburgh Castle. He languished there for months before being executed. His only crime was to pose a threat to the king's power.
Another notable prisoner was Isabel Gowdie, a woman accused of witchcraft in 17th century Scotland. Gowdie was imprisoned in the bottle dungeon of Tolbooth Prison in Forres. Subjected to torture and psychological manipulation, She confessed to a litany of fantastical crimes. Gaudi's case highlights the dangers of superstition and the ease with which accusations could lead to unimaginable suffering.
These stories, though disturbing, provide a glimpse into the lives and experiences of those who endured the horrors of bottle dungeon confinement. Their suffering should not be forgotten, but instead serve as a reminder of the need for compassion and justice in all societies. The conditions within a bottle dungeon were designed to break the human spirit. The lack of natural light disrupted sleep patterns, leading to hallucinations. The absence of fresh air created a stifling atmosphere.
The psychological impact was equally devastating. Isolation induced extreme anxiety and paranoia.
The constant darkness played tricks on the mind. Many prisoners took their own lives, rather than endure another day.
The psychological scars could last a lifetime. The trauma endured served as a stark reminder of the cruelty. Bottle dungeons, though horrific, were just one instrument in a vast arsenal of punishments employed throughout history. While each punishment carried its own unique form of suffering, they all shared a common goal: to inflict pain, break the spirit, and deter future transgressions.
Public humiliation, for example, was a common punishment designed to shame and degrade the individual in the eyes of their community. The stocks, the pillory, and branding were all methods used to mark the offender and make them a social pariah. While these punishments may have spared the body, they could inflict lasting psychological damage.
Torture, on the other hand, focused on inflicting excruciating physical pain. Devices such as the rack, the thumb screws, and the Iron Maiden were designed to stretch, crush, and mutilate the body. The screams of the condemned served as a gruesome reminder of the power held by the authorities.
Compared to these other forms of punishment, bottle dungeons occupied a unique space. They were not designed for public spectacle, but rather for isolation and deprivation. The suffering inflicted within their walls was private, hidden from the view of the world. This aspect, perhaps more than any other, contributed to the terror associated with these subterranean prisons.
Section 8. Echoes of Cruelty. Lasting Impacts on Society. The use of bottle dungeons declined with more enlightened approaches to justice. However, their legacy casts a long shadow. The horrors within these chambers remind us of the dark side of human nature.
The impact extended beyond immediate suffering. Fear served as a powerful deterrent. These prisons reinforced social hierarchies. Cruel punishments fostered a culture of fear. The threat of imprisonment created paranoia. This atmosphere stifled dissent.
The psychological scars extended to families. The disappearance of loved ones left profound loss. Uncertainty and fear left lasting trauma. Section 9. From Retribution to Rehabilitation. A shift in perspective. The gradual decline of bottle dungeons coincided with a broader shift in societal attitudes towards punishment. The Enlightenment, with its emphasis on reason and human rights, brought about a reassessment of traditional methods of justice. Thinkers began to question the effectiveness of torture and corporal punishment, advocating instead for more humane and rehabilitative approaches.
This shift in perspective led to the development of new penal theories that emphasized reform over retribution. Prisons were no longer seen solely as places of punishment, but also as institutions where individuals could be rehabilitated and reintegrated into society. This shift in thinking paved the way for the modern prison system, with its emphasis on education, vocational training, and psychological counseling. Of course, the journey towards a more just and humane penal system has been long and arduous, and it is far from over. Even today, many prisons around the world struggle with issues of overcrowding, violence, and inadequate access to rehabilitation programs. Nevertheless, the shift from bottle dungeons to modern correctional facilities represents a significant step forward in our understanding of justice and human dignity.
Section 10. The Evolution of Justice, a Continuing Journey. The history of bottle dungeons reminds us to constantly question our approaches to justice. What was once acceptable can be viewed with horror by future generations. We must avoid cruelty and dehumanization. True justice is about accountability, rehabilitation, and dignity. Justice evolves through reflection and dialogue. Learning from the past helps us pursue a more humane world. Section 11. Lest we forget. The bottle dungeon stands as a chilling testament to the depths of human cruelty. More than just a prison, it represents the deliberate infliction of suffering, the exploitation of fear, and the suppression of the human spirit. While these subterranean chambers may now lie mostly silent, their legacy serves as a potent reminder. We must never forget the lessons learned from these dark chapters in human history. By understanding the motivations and consequences of such cruelty, we can strive to create a world where justice is tempered with mercy and where the dignity of every individual is paramount. Only then can we truly say that we have learned from the mistakes of the past and are building a brighter future for all.